Imagine you're standing in a field 3,000 years ago. It's the middle of the day, the sun is high, warm, completely ordinary, and then over the course of a few minutes it starts to vanish. Not behind clouds, not behind a mountain. It just gets eaten, piece by piece, until the sky goes dark, the air goes cold, and the stars come out at noon. You have no telescope, no physics textbook, no idea that the moon is simply passing in front of the sun. All you know is that the single most reliable thing in your entire universe, the sun that rises every morning without fail, is dying in front of you. What would you think was happening? By the end of this, you'll understand why eclipses terrified nearly every ancient civilization on Earth and why the fear made a strange kind of sense. Let's start with the basic problem eclipses created for ancient people. Almost every early civilization built its entire understanding of reality around the predictability of the sky. The sun rose, the sun set. The moon moved through its phases. The seasons turned in an endless, reliable cycle. That predictability wasn't just comforting. It was the foundation of agriculture, religion, and government. Kings claimed authority partly because they were believed to maintain cosmic order. So when the sky suddenly broke its own rules, when the sun disappeared without warning in the middle of the day, it wasn't just a strange light show. It was evidence that the entire structure of reality might be failing. In ancient China, this fear had a specific shape. Solar eclipses were believed to be caused by a celestial dragon devouring the sun. The Chinese term for eclipse still literally translates to eat, a linguistic fossil of that original belief. And this wasn't treated as a passive event to simply watch and wait out. Ancient Chinese astronomers documented eclipses as far back as the Shang dynasty, more than 3,000 years ago, and imperial court records describe elaborate rituals meant to fight back. People banged drums, shot arrows into the sky, and made as much noise as possible, trying to scare the dragon away from its meal. There's a story, likely part legend, part historical record, about two royal astronomers named Si and Ho, who were reportedly executed for failing to predict an eclipse in advance. Whether or not that specific execution happened exactly as described, the lesson embedded in the story is real. Predicting eclipses wasn't academic curiosity. It was a matter of protecting the state, because failing to warn the emperor that the dragon was coming was considered a catastrophic failure of duty. The fear wasn't just about losing the sun, it was about what a vanishing sun meant for the person who ruled in its name. In many ancient cultures, kings and emperors positioned themselves as the human representative of the sun's power on Earth. If the sun could be attacked and darkened, so, symbolically, could the king. Ancient Chinese court astrologers linked solar eclipses directly to the fate of the emperor, and a poorly timed eclipse could be read as a sign that his rule was in danger, or that his authority to govern had come into question. This gave eclipses enormous political weight. An eclipse wasn't just a natural event. It could be read by rivals as proof that the heavens themselves were withdrawing their support. Mesopotamian civilizations developed one of the most elaborate and specific responses to this fear. Babylonian astronomers were remarkably skilled observers of the sky, and over centuries they built up detailed records that allowed them to predict eclipses with real accuracy long before they understood the actual mechanics behind them. But prediction didn't remove the fear. It just meant they had advance warning of when the fear needed to peak. Babylonian tradition held that eclipses could signal danger specifically aimed at the king. Their solution was almost theatrical in its cleverness. During a predicted eclipse, a substitute king would be temporarily installed on the throne, a stand-in meant to absorb whatever cosmic misfortune the eclipse represented. The real king would step back from public life and effectively hide, while the substitute bore the risk in his place. After the danger had passed, the substitute king's role would end, sometimes, according to some historical accounts, in his death, treated as a kind of ritual sacrifice that closed out the threat entirely. This is a genuinely remarkable response. These weren't people paralyzed by superstition, they were problem solvers, using the tools available to them, prediction and ritual, to manage a threat they didn't fully understand but took extremely seriously. Ancient Greece sits at an interesting hinge point in this story, because Greek thinkers were among the first to start separating the eclipse from pure omen and edge toward it as a natural phenomenon. The philosopher Thales of Miletus is credited, according to later historical accounts, with predicting a solar eclipse around 585 BCE, an event that reportedly interrupted an active battle between the Lydians and the Medes. Both armies, according to the ancient historian Herodotus, were so unsettled by the sudden darkness that they stopped fighting and negotiated peace on the spot. Whether the story is precisely accurate in every detail, historians still debate it, but the core idea it preserves is powerful. An eclipse was considered significant enough to end a war immediately, because continuing to fight while the heavens displayed such an obvious, dramatic warning was seen as reckless in the extreme. Even as Greek philosophy slowly moved toward naturalistic explanations for eclipses, the emotional weight of the event didn't disappear. Understanding the mechanism didn't automatically cancel the dread. Across the Atlantic, entirely isolated from Old World astronomy, Mesoamerican civilizations developed their own sophisticated and independent eclipse traditions. The Maya were extraordinarily precise astronomers. Their scholars tracked eclipse cycles with real mathematical accuracy, recorded in bark paper books like the Dresden Codex, which contains detailed eclipse prediction tables. But precision didn't mean comfort. Solar eclipses were widely interpreted across Mesoamerican cultures as the sun being wounded or consumed, an event that threatened the stability of the entire world. Rituals during eclipses often involved loud noise, similar in spirit to the Chinese response half a world away, along with bloodletting ceremonies meant to offer the sun renewed strength to fight off whatever was attacking it. The Aztecs held related beliefs, viewing eclipses as deeply dangerous omens capable of unleashing supernatural beings into the world during the period of darkness, and responding with urgent ritual action to protect the community until the sun reappeared. In parts of ancient India, eclipses were tied to the myth of Rahu, a demon who, according to legend, tricked the gods into letting him drink a sacred nectar of immortality. Before the nectar could fully pass through his throat, the sun and moon spotted the deception and alerted the god Vishnu, who beheaded Rahu just in time. Because Rahu had already swallowed enough of the nectar to become immortal, his severed head lived on, forever chasing the sun and moon across the sky in an endless act of revenge, occasionally catching and swallowing them, which is what an eclipse represented. This story gave the eclipse a personal, almost petty emotional logic. It wasn't a distant cosmic malfunction, it was an ancient grudge playing out overhead. Many traditional practices connected to this belief encourage people to avoid eating during an eclipse, to bathe afterward for purification, and pregnant women in particular were often advised to stay indoors, reflecting how deeply this fear extended into daily behavior, not just abstract belief. What's striking, looking across all of these civilizations, China, Babylon, Greece, the Maya, India, is how many of them landed on strikingly similar responses despite having no contact with each other. Noise, ritual, urgent communal action, all aimed at the same instinct: do something, anything, to fight back against a sky that had suddenly betrayed its own rules. That pattern repeating independently across separate continents and separate centuries suggests something deeper than coincidence. It suggests eclipses tapped into an extremely fundamental human vulnerability: the fear of losing control over something you had always assumed was permanent and unshakable. And in a strange way, that fear wasn't irrational. These civilizations didn't yet have the tools to know an eclipse was a temporary, harmless alignment of the sun and moon. From where they stood, with the information they actually had, a sudden, unexplained darkness in the middle of the day was a completely reasonable thing to be afraid of. Their responses, ritual, prediction, sacrifice, storytelling, were sophisticated attempts to impose order and meaning onto an event that genuinely looked like the world was ending. Some of these civilizations, particularly the Babylonians and the Maya, even achieved remarkably accurate predictive power centuries before they had any real understanding of orbital mechanics, which is its own kind of extraordinary achievement, built entirely on patient, long-term observation rather than theory. Modern science eventually explained exactly what's happening during an eclipse: a straightforward, elegant, predictable alignment of three bodies in space. And once you know that, the fear should, in theory, evaporate completely. But even today, something about a total solar eclipse still stops people in their tracks. Crowds still gather. People still fall silent as the sky darkens in the middle of the day. Something in that experience still reaches past the science we now understand and touches something older, something that remembers, even now, that the sun disappearing was once the most frightening thing a human being could witness. So maybe the real question isn't why ancient humans feared eclipses. Maybe it's why, even now, with every equation solved and every mechanism understood, that same darkening sky can still make a modern crowd go completely quiet.